After my first serious relationship ended, I found myself back in the world of dating apps. It was strange, navigating the landscape of digital dating after being in a committed relationship for so long. At first, I treated it as a harmless distraction, something to occupy my evenings. I wasn't looking for anything serious, at least not yet. By the time of this story, I had already met a few people from Match.com. 2 dates fizzled out after a single meeting. The third turned into a short-lived relationship that lasted 4 months. After that, I decided to take a break from anything serious. I wanted something casual, low pressure. That's when I matched with Kylie. Kylie's profile was unassuming but intriguing. She had an understated beauty, soft features, pale skin, and long, dark hair that framed her face. Her bio was brief, just a few lines about her love for movies and books. She didn't come across as overly flashy or attention-seeking, which I liked. There was a certain mystery to her, and I was curious to get to know her. We started chatting, and while the conversation wasn't electric, it was easy enough. She seemed shy, her replies short and to the point. Still, I thought it might be worth meeting her in person. After a few days of messaging, I suggested she come over to my apartment to hang out. She agreed without hesitation, which surprised me. Most people would have suggested meeting in public first, but I chalked it up to her being laid back and trusting. She said she'd be there in half an hour. True to her word, she arrived right on time. When I opened the door, I was struck by how quiet she was in person. She barely made eye contact, her voice soft and almost monotone as she greeted me. Still, I tried to make her feel comfortable, inviting her inside and leading her up to my room. My apartment wasn't anything fancy, just a modest 2-bedroom with paper-thin walls and creaky floors. My room was small but cozy, with a bed pushed against one wall and a TV mounted on the other. We settled in, sitting on the bed with a movie playing in the background. At first, the conversation was light, mostly small talk about her favorite movies and books. But as the evening went on, the silences grew longer and more awkward. I did my best to fill the gaps, asking questions and trying to keep the conversation flowing. But Kylie's responses became increasingly strange. She started talking about dark, unsettling topics, things like death, loneliness, and secrets she said she'd never told anyone. Her voice was flat, her words emotionless, as if she were reciting lines from a script. I tried to steer the conversation back to lighter topics, but she seemed fixated on the macabre. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Thanks for letting me sleep over." The statement caught me off guard. I had invited her to hang out, but I hadn't realized she intended to stay the night. I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Yeah, sure," I said finally. "That's fine." She got off the bed and asked if I had a blanket she could use for the floor. I grabbed a couple of blankets and a pillow from the closet, setting up a makeshift bed for her on the carpet. She thanked me, then laid down on her side, facing away from me. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. I turned off the TV, crawled into bed, and closed my eyes. It took me a while to fall asleep. The whole situation felt odd. 2 strangers, barely knowing each other, now sharing a room. But eventually exhaustion won, and I drifted off. I woke up in the middle of the night, disoriented. The room was pitch black except for the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. Something felt off. I sat up in bed and looked down at the floor where Kylie had been sleeping. She wasn't there. My heart started to race as I scanned the room. The blankets and pillow were still on the floor, untouched, as if she had never laid down. I flipped on the bedside lamp, the sudden light flooding the room. She was gone. Then I heard it, a faint voice coming from downstairs. It sounded like whispering, low and incoherent. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I strained to listen, trying to make out what she was saying. Was she on the phone, talking to herself? I quietly got out of bed and crept to the top of the stairs. Peering down into the darkness, I could just make out her silhouette in the kitchen. She was sitting in one of the chairs, facing the wall, her head slightly tilted. The whispering continued, soft and almost rhythmic. I couldn't make out the words, but there was something deeply unsettling about the way she was sitting there, completely still except for her lips moving. "Kylie?" I called out, my voice shaky. She stopped whispering. Slowly, she turned her head to look at me. Her face was expressionless, her eyes dark and empty. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity before turning back to face the wall. An icy chill ran down my spine. I backed away, retreating to my room and locking the door behind me. My hands were trembling as I grabbed my phone and called my dad. It took 3 tries before he finally picked up, his groggy voice filled with concern. "Dad," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's this girl I met online. She's staying over, but she's acting weird. She's downstairs, sitting in the dark, whispering to herself. I don't know what to do." He sounded confused. "What do you mean weird? Is she drunk?" "Hi." "I don't think so," I said. I don't know. She's creeping me out." "Listen," he said. "If she's acting dangerous, you need to call the police. Don't try to handle this on your own." As he spoke, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. My breath caught in my throat as I turned to see Kylie standing in the doorway, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light. I hadn't heard her come up the stairs. She stood there, completely still, watching me. I was frozen in place, clutching the phone to my ear. "Dad," I whispered. "She's in my room." The next moment happened so fast it felt like a blur. Kylie let out an ear-piercing scream and lunged at me, her hands wrapping around my throat. I fell back onto the bed, struggling to pry her hands off as she tightened her grip. Her face was inches from mine, her eyes wild and unhinged. Adrenaline surged through me as I managed to overpower her, shoving her off and pinning her down. She thrashed and screamed, her nails clawing at my arms. "Dad, call the cops." I shouted into the phone, barely able to hold her down. Somehow, I managed to drag her downstairs, her screams echoing through the apartment. By the time the police arrived, she had gone eerily quiet, sitting on the floor with her head down. The officers took her away, asking me a few questions before leaving. They told me she seemed to be having some kind of mental episode, but they didn't give me any more details. Breaking up with my first girlfriend at 21 left me single for the first time in years. It was an unfamiliar, almost jarring feeling, a void in my life that I wasn't quite used to. For the next year, I tried to focus on myself, new hobbies, friends, and rediscovering who I was. But the inevitable pull of loneliness crept in. Eventually, I decided to dip my toes back into the world of dating. Dating apps felt like both a blessing and a curse. Endless faces and profiles to scroll through, each promising the potential of connection. After trying a few, I found myself gravitating toward OkCupid. It seemed more laid back, with profiles that gave me a better sense of who the person was. That's where I met Brenna. Her profile immediately caught my attention. She was stunning, light-skinned, with warm, hazel eyes and a captivating smile. But what really drew me in was her bio. She was into gaming, anime, indie music, basically everything I was into. It felt like we'd click, and we did. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and after about a week of chatting, we agreed to meet up. We planned for dinner. I'd pick her up at her house, and we'd grab something casual. The day of the date, I was a mix of excitement and nerves. By 6:30 p.m., I was parked in front of her house on the west side of town. The sun had just set, leaving the sky a deep navy blue. Streetlights buzzed faintly, casting an eerie orange glow on the quiet neighborhood. I texted Brenna to let her know I was outside. Minutes ticked by with no response. I stared at my phone, watching the typing bubble appear and disappear. Finally, she replied, "Hey, sorry about that. My brother's gonna meet you outside. He's being really annoying and protective." Her brother? I sighed, already dreading the awkward small talk. I texted back, trying to mask my irritation. "All right, no problem." The front door creaked open, and out walked a tall figure. As he approached, I noticed he was massive, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders and an intimidating presence. His complexion was much darker than Brenna's, which struck me as odd. They didn't even look remotely related. Still, I shook his hand when he introduced himself as Will. He seemed friendly enough, flashing a toothy grin as we exchanged pleasantries. Will started asking me a lot of questions, what I did for work, how I knew Brenna, what my intentions were. It felt less like a conversation, and more like an interrogation. But I played along, desperate to get past this awkward hurdle and finally meet Brenna. After a few minutes, Will said, "Come inside." Brenna's just finishing up getting ready. Reluctantly, I followed him into the house. The air inside was stale, with a faint metallic smell that I couldn't quite place. The living room was dimly lit, with mismatched furniture and cluttered surfaces. It felt unwelcoming. "Wait here," Will said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll go get Brenna." As he disappeared upstairs, I noticed 2 men sitting on the couch across from me. Their eyes locked onto me, unblinking. One had a scar running down his cheek. The other was chewing on a toothpick, his expression unreadable. "What's up?" I said, trying to break the tension. The one with the toothpick barely nodded. The other just stared. I shifted uncomfortably, glancing around the room. That's when I noticed another man sitting at the dining table in the adjacent room. He was leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, glaring at me. My stomach sank. Something was off. Will's voice called down from upstairs. "I'm trying to find her. Hang tight." My pulse quickened. Something wasn't adding up. Why couldn't he find Brenna in her own house? And why were there so many men here? Instinctively, I stepped back toward the front door. My hand reached for the doorknob, and that's when I heard it. "Grab him!" The words sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I flung the door open and bolted outside. Heavy footsteps thundered behind me as I sprinted to my car. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I barely managed to slam the car door shut before they reached me. A loud thud shook the car as one of them kicked the door. Another banged on the window with his fist, shouting obscenities. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, until finally the engine roared to life. I floored it, tires screeching as I sped down the block. In the rearview mirror, I saw the men standing in the middle of the street, their silhouettes illuminated by the glow of the streetlights. When I got home, I burst through the door, still gasping for air. My parents were startled by my frantic state. I recounted everything, expecting them to be as terrified as I was. Instead, they seemed skeptical. "Are you sure you're not overreacting?" my dad asked. "Call the police," my mom said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced either. I did. The police took my statement, and thankfully, a neighbor had witnessed the men attacking my car and corroborated my story. A few days later, I got a call from the police. They'd arrested 3 of the men, including Will. The 4th, however, was still at large. As for Brenna, she didn't exist. The profile was fake, a trap set to lure unsuspecting victims like me. The experience shook me to my core. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without double-checking that all the doors and windows were locked. I kept replaying the moment I heard "grab him" over and over in my mind, wondering what would have happened if I hadn't escaped. Though I eventually went back to using dating apps, I was never the same. Every match, every message, every profile picture was met with suspicion. I learned to trust my gut, to read between the lines, and to always meet in a public place. The memory of that night still lingers, a dark reminder of how quickly something innocent can turn sinister. This story, I still get chills when I repeat it after all these years. I've used apps like Tinder and Bumble over the years, mostly for fun. Sure, I've had my fair share of awkward conversations and bad dates, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened in February of 2014. It was the dead of winter, one of those weeks where the snow never stopped and the streets were coated in ice. For someone like me who hated the cold, it was the perfect excuse to stay indoors, bundled up under a blanket with my phone in hand. That's when I downloaded Badoo. I'd heard it was more casual than some of the other apps, and I wasn't looking for anything serious at the time, just someone to talk to and maybe hang out with. I started swiping and messaging, juggling conversations with 5 or 6 girls at a time. Most of them fizzled out quickly, as they often do, but one stood out, Maria. Maria's profile was simple, almost too simple. No long bio, no quirky jokes, just a few pictures of her smiling softly at the camera. She had long, dark hair and deep brown eyes that seemed to draw you in. There was something understated about her beauty, something natural and unpretentious. Her profile said she was 24, just a couple of years younger than me, and lived nearby. We started chatting, and I was surprised by how quickly the conversation flowed. She was easy to talk to, funny in a subtle way, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Every time I heard the triple note ding from Badoo, "Maria sent you a new message," I felt a little jolt of excitement. After a few days of back and forth, I worked up the nerve to ask her if she wanted to hang out. She responded almost immediately, "Yeah, let's do it. What's your address?" That should have been a red flag. Most people wouldn't agree to meet at a stranger's house right away, let alone ask for their address without hesitation. But I was caught up in the moment, flattered by her enthusiasm. Without thinking, I sent her my address. Her reply came quickly, "Be there soon." I asked for her number, so we could text instead of using the app, but she didn't respond. I waited, staring at my phone, but after a few minutes, her status switched to offline. I figured she'd be back soon, and tried to distract myself by watching TV. An hour passed. Then 2. By now it was late, too late for someone to just drop by. I checked the app again. Maria was still offline. Feeling disappointed, I turned off the TV and went to bed. I woke up early the next morning to the sound of rain tapping against my window. It was still dark outside, the kind of gray, overcast morning that makes you want to stay in bed all day. I checked the clock, 6:30 a.m. Grateful it wasn't time to get up yet, I rolled over and reached for my phone. That's when I saw the notifications. Maria had messaged me 3 times during the night. My heart sank as I opened the app. The first message was sent at 3 a.m. "Hey, I'm coming now." The second at 3:20 a.m. "I'm here." And the third at 4 a.m. "I'm watching you." My blood ran cold. I sat up in bed, clutching the phone as if it might somehow explain the messages. What did she mean? "I'm watching you"? Was this some kind of joke? I noticed Maria was online again. Before I could think of what to say, another message popped up. "How did you sleep?" A wave of unease washed over me. My heart started pounding as I glanced toward the window. The blinds were still closed, but suddenly they felt paper thin. I got out of bed and peeked outside, half expecting to see someone standing in the rain, staring back at me. But the street was empty. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Who the hell is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "Check your closet and find out." I froze. My closet door was directly across the room. I knew it had been closed when I went to bed, but now it was slightly ajar. The darkness inside seemed to stretch endlessly, an open maw waiting to swallow me whole. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, that maybe I'd left it open without realizing it. But deep down I knew better. My stomach churned as I stared at the open door, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then the door creaked. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to open. Panic set in. I grabbed my phone and bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. My heart was racing as I dialed my older brother, who was staying with me for the weekend. He answered groggily on the 3rd ring. "Dude," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's someone in my room." "What are you talking about?" he mumbled. "I think someone's in the closet," I said. "Please, just come upstairs." A few moments later, I heard him stomping up the stairs. He was half asleep, wearing nothing but sweatpants, but he looked concerned when he saw the look on my face. "Are you serious right now?" he asked. I nodded, pointing to the door. "Just check, please." He sighed and pushed the door open, flipping on the light. The closet door was now fully open, but there was no one inside. He rummaged through the clothes and boxes, even checking the small crawl space at the back. "Nothing. You're freaking out over nothing," he said, shaking his head. "Lock your windows next time." It was only then that I realized my window had been unlocked. A cold breeze seeped into the room, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. I didn't go back to sleep that morning. Instead, I went to the police station to report what had happened. I showed them the messages on Badoo, hoping they could track the person behind the profile. But it wasn't that simple. They explained that without a court order, they couldn't compel Badoo to release any information. I was frustrated but tried to move on. For the next week, I slept with my bedroom door locked and a chair wedged under the handle. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind made my heart race. But nothing happened. Then one night, I got another message from Maria's profile. "I'm coming back." I immediately blocked the profile, deleted the app, and changed all the locks on my doors. To this day, I don't know who Maria really was or what she wanted. But the thought of her, or whoever was behind that profile, still haunts me.